It's Matterall. Let's talk EVE Online. It is August the 18th, 2020. That's a Tuesday. Here with a few friends to talk to you about momentous things that are happening inside of the game. For the first time, we've seen ISEC map change, I guess, in a significant way. It depends on who you ask, I suppose. But the system of Niarja, which was a system that was key to travel between two major trade hubs, that system has become low security space, which means you are vulnerable to attack when you are passing through. This essentially breaks the safe travel points between the trade hubs, effectively snapping them into two parts. We now have a northern hemisphere and a southern hemisphere as far as trade and supplies go. That's a very big deal. It was made permanent a few hours ago when Niarja hit full liminality, which means it is considered lost to Triglavian invasions. And so we have, on this morning or this day, a new reality in EVE Online. Hasn't been seen before. All right. How's it going, guys? Tiberius, Grigorin?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Caleb, be right back, I believe. Take a look in here, see what we got. Well, you guys have initial thoughts? I know you were on the air yesterday talking about it. I want to say thanks, by the way, to McLeod, who streamed. Looked great. Good presentation. Did about an hour, 45 minutes talking about Niarja as it was going down. And good stuff there. A lot of theorizing. So if you want to know more about what this means, go back to yesterday's show and check that out. You can find that on youtube.com/talkinginstations.
I mean, initial thought, one, obviously it's a pretty unexpected result for a lot of people, I think. A lot of people claimed that CCP wouldn't ever spawn Niarja in the first place. And I think most people assumed it would be defended if it ever spawned. So it's obviously a big surprise to a lot of people that it is now no longer a high-sec system.
I disagree. I honestly think that CCP almost expected this. I think it's also almost part of their wishes and their plan, and I think it's tied into something quite exciting that we're going to be seeing within the next 2 to 3 months. It's not just jokingly that we've been throwing around Jita by Christmas. It's kind of based on, I don't know if you guys remember when we picked apart some of the hobo stuff and looked at some of the things that had been put in the client with regards to Jita 4.4 changes. We were talking about whether that was a jump gate or a wormhole or what exactly it was that was going to come on grid. I think there's a huge chance that much of this Triglavian stuff is going to split up the empires, bring on some sort of maybe Cold War between them again, and then we might actually get something like Ulay as the neutral trade hub, and then something like the highways back. I'm, of course, tinfoiling and speculating. I'm just saying this might actually be the solution to some of the problems that we've had during the era where the highways have been out. That there's this misbalance about what area to live in and where the hubs form. You can't really effectively have hubs secondary to Jita anymore because of changes that's happened over the past 10 years. So this, I think, is part of the fixing of that. I think Ratati and his crew and the guys that have been working on all this Triglavian stuff has actually figured out a way to make these things happen and make sense again.
I meant it more in the way of the general population. I agree that CCP probably has some ideas about it, but when I talk to people throughout invasion content, which has been ongoing for a few months now, many people just said CCP would never spawn an important system or roll it back or something. And as I said, the other part of the disbelief was more about player actions and outcomes. Like even yesterday when Niarja was just spawning, I think majority opinion was that probably it is too important to fail, too big to fail a system. So it would be protected, and it didn't end up that way. And that was what I mean.
Well, and it looked like until well, all the drama started happening that it was going to fall, right? There was a heavy side for the Triglavian that was kind of pushing it very slowly, but they were definitely winning until there was some people coming in and changing that a little bit around.
Let's talk about that. So apparently a test was starting to fight on the side of Edencom because even though we had Billy on here yesterday saying he didn't really care either way which way it went, or he had no opinion on which way it went, Test apparently started fighting on the side of Edencom, which was to pacify the system in a way to keep it part of HiSec. In other words, to preserve the status quo. And that made it so that Goonswarm could come and deny victory to Test on the heels of this weekend.
Yeah, messing it up, right? But I think if I'm not mistaken, this is the pandas, right, that kind of have a vested interest in it. I don't know how big it is, and I don't know how much it really necessarily hurts the whole Pappy side. I think it's some people in there are dependent on it, and that makes it a little bit important because they're basically allies. But as Willy said, it's not necessarily going to completely mess anything up. It's also why these comments on doom and gloom and this is going to break even, people are going to leave. It's like, no, it's not. This is just a new normal, and we're going to see people adapt, and we're going to see interesting changes and things being shuffled around in ways that is potentially not very easy to predict, but it's definitely going to make a dent in the stagnation, and I like that.
Well, it's going to change some things. I mean, you're going to see new systems become Rancer type pirating systems that are going to be choke points for travel. I think some people will try their luck. Some people will try to get through that one system really fast. Who knows what? But there's going to be a lot of interception points now. And there was only, and it's not like this was safe before. This what we used to call a highway between Jita and Amar was also very dangerous. Like you had a pilot through there most of the time. Not most, but some of the time.
Apparently I'm low on the volume on the stream, but not in Discord, right?
Yeah, you're not low in Discord, but you're low on stream. Let's put you up there. All right, go ahead. Say something again.
Well, again, you're just pointing out that this was still a choke point, right? It was where the pirates would be laying their traps and waiting for people to go through. So it was not perfectly safe. It's just the new route is like ridiculous, even though there's. Okay, I just had a little bit of a chat, and I think there's something really weirdly wrong with what's called the ant colony algorithm, the one that actually tries to calculate your route for you, because I'm pretty sure that it's something like 15 from Jita to Dot, and then it's 18 from Dot to Amar. So that does not sum up to 46. So there's something wrong with that 46 thing, even though, of course, the algorithm is running and doing its thing, but it's just not choosing the best route for some reason.
All right. Well, hold on. Before you guys go any further, I just need to get caught up with what you guys were talking about yesterday. So we have a system that is key to 2 trade hubs going down and becoming low sec. That's number 1. That actually happened a few hours ago. So that is now a permanent change, or so far as we know, a permanent change. The people
it's actually fake null, right? It's not even fake low sec. It's fake null sec.
But
right?
it's
-7 true sec as far as I know.
Okay, right.
Should we address for?
No, I don't. Let me get through this one little section so I can bring people up to speed, and then we can totally talk about it. But I don't yet have my head around it, and we're going into deep ends all over the place. And I know you guys are continuing from yesterday. I want to start fresh today just to get people caught up. So give me that time and don't interrupt me, please. So we have a system that is a trade hub being cut off again from the north and cut off from the south. That looks like a permanent change now. And here's what I wanted to get to. There's a bit of a proxy war going on where you have Fraternity was making some moves. I guess can't talk about those yet. They're not public. That were interesting a couple days or yesterday when this all started. They seem to be fighting in that system quite a bit. Test apparently got involved on the side of EdenCom to try to preserve the status quo. In other words, save that system to be high sec. But Goonswarm sent 3 fleets to go up there and to fight so that they could deny a victory to Test. I don't think there was any other reason for that. They have no strategic plans on this that I know of. They're part of the Tranquility Trade Tower. So I don't know how much they want to hamper that. Maybe they don't care about it. Maybe they just want to put egg on Test's face, even more so than just losing their money. So, okay. So that to me is that these are the big headlines. Niarja is low sec as far as security is concerned. It is now a dangerous system to travel through. What do you guys think?
Well, just to go into a few details with what you just said, because it was correct, but there's something that I think is missing. I think, if I'm not mistaken, there is an interest in the route from Jeddah to Amar, specifically for the pandas, right? And they might have, overstated that interest when they asked for help. So what must have happened is that spies picked up on this, or it got spread that they were interested in this and that they needed help to actually make sure that it shifted back in the favor of EdenCom. And that's when Imperium pretty much saw that and said, okay, if this is an important thing for them, even though it's not important for all of Pappy, but even if it's just important for some of Pappy, right? That means that messing that up and taking away that toy is kind of a strategic interest for the Imperium. So they said, oh, hell, let's just go and do that and see if we can actually mess with it and push it to actual fake nullsec.
Yeah.
And when I went to bed, that had not really materialized yet. So I still thought, because of the ping that came out from the Pappy and the Allied forces, I thought that the Triglavians had lost. And I was a little bit angry that nullsec was getting involved in this and messing with what I would consider Ashtarothi and his friends up in HighSec, right? I also ate my hat yesterday on stream, and you can go back and hear that. I'm not going to repeat it. But I basically pointed out that, yes, this is an example of PvE that actually matters. And because it happened the way it did, it became a proxy war. And I think that's extremely exciting. And it's definitely something I would like to see more of in the future from CCP. So please, let's have more of these weird agency PvE, PvP designs, because it's been really dramatic for me.
Who do you mean by the pandas? Fraternity?
Yeah.
Let's make a couple
That's
more.
their logo, right?
Let's make a couple more things clear. The system is no longer low sec. It was low sec yesterday. It is now technically null sec. Null sec again. That is below 0.0. And the other thing is, this is what we call fake null. So you can't do what you can do in proper null sec. This is just a security status drop, which means that there is no penalty for PvP in this system. It doesn't mean mechanically you can do new things in that system. You still can't bomb, and you still can't bubble. You can't do any of that stuff. All it means...
Can't either.
You can't what?
Cynos.
You can't light Cynos. And you can't... Now I'm confused about that. You can't bring...
But you can jump freighter, right? Which you couldn't before.
I don't think you can.
I think you should be able to. Because, usually it's only low, but this was mid-sec. I think now you should potentially be able to, but I don't know if that's actually not part of the option.
What I remember is that you couldn't... if EdenCom were to win, they would Cyno jam the system. and that was a big thing. But
Yeah.
so you can't sign on either.
To be clear, systems that were originally high-sec remain effectively high-sec for all intents and purposes other than Concord and security status.
What we call Crime
And
Watch.
water eligibility, but that's just for declaring. You can get declared on, but if you have war HQ for a war you have declared on someone else, it will get invalidated and you can't use it anymore. That's the other change. But except that, it's the same rules than high-sec.
Yeah, so no bubbles, no sinos, no nothing, no bombs.
Yeah, no bubbles, no bushes, no bombs, no sinos.
I do think that it should at least have the ability to jump freighter into, right? When it goes to this fake null, because that's quite a big step.
So the design of this particular space, as was discussed on our show when we interviewed Sledgehammer and Coyote, they basically said that they would have liked to have done a full security status change, but that was impractical given the time and resource constraints. So this is what was done. However, that does not preclude the opportunity to finalize that once the invasion is over, and they might have the time and resources to make a permanent security status change. So we may see further changes to these systems, but as it stands right now, they are a unique space in EVE Online. There's no other space with these specific rules: the no bubbles, no bushes, no bombs, no sinos, but also no police and security status.
Manual stream says we're still very low. I don't know if you can do something.
Yeah, I'm trying to work it out. I have you guys at max. I'm seeing that you're coming in low, but I'm blowing out my eardrums trying to get you guys' volumes up. I hate Windows. I'm gonna just tell you guys, because this is not nearly as difficult than it was before. Let me just make sure this is working out. Let's see. Say something there, Caleb.
Well, I could try, but then someone else has to listen because I was kind of trying to actually listen instead.
Fonsoy, you were quiet. Can you speak as well? That was really loud.
The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog.
Now it's loud. Yeah, it fixed it. You did something.
Yeah, because all right, try it again.
He's getting it out.
This is not the right day to stream. I'm furious. Like, this is technical problems, scheduling problems. Just trying to stumble out of the gate here. I can't even get going. But I think we're okay.
We're good now. It says much better. Everyone is okay, even though it's a bit loud. All but right. It's fine. So, they can turn it down.
Yeah.
So I'll just get us back on track where we were. I was basically saying that Sledgehammer and Coyote said that the way that things are is because of time and resource constraints. They may decide to make further changes at the end of the invasion. However, the way that things are right now, this is unique space. No other systems have these specific rules.
All right. We're working out this balance. We'll get it right.
Wow, someone is giving me nostalgia, actually referring to my old days in my own alliance. But anyways, I have got a new mic since then. Trust me on this, guys. But I will eventually get around to getting one when I fix my rig setup.
All right, last chance to get some voice points. Go ahead. How loud are you? Francois, you're the one.
Jack does love my big Sphinx of quartz.
The Sphinx says what?
Okay. All right.
But as you mentioned,
sound should be good now. It looks good except for me. I'm too loud.
It's really the fact that they didn't really have a model yet for how to do what would be considered dynamic security status. This is like their attempt to go down that path, and if they can, they might actually add more of these features and reuse the whole thing to introduce proper dynamic TrueSec and just remove it from all the old code, which is basically antiquated a lot.
Right. So there's a lot of things that tie into actual sec status, such as the spawning of, resource and combat anomalies. All sorts of things tie back into this.
Bounty system, mission system, all of it's tied into it. It's horrible.
Yeah, all of it. So Crime Watch was a low-hanging fruit. Like, Crime Watch was a separate system that was like on top of everything else, and they were able to just like shut that off or modify its rules separately without like spending gazillions of hours on working on actual security status changes. And that's why we got what we got.
And as you kind of indirectly mentioned there with response times and all these things and the old Concord code, and there's just so much code in there that's antiquated and kind of needs to be refreshed and remade. And if they wanted to do changes to something like Concord, how they respond or behave and how fast and how powerful and all of that stuff, right? They would need to use this new system. So they have to figure out how to then remove the old. This is exactly like with parsers and structures, right? This is what I think you and I, Alfonso, has called the transplant model, right? You kind of need to add some new layer to be able to do the swap between the old and the new system.
I mean,
Yeah, you have to abstract it.
one thing we talked about, I think, yesterday as well, to refresh, is that they are synchronizing system outcomes between Serenity and Tranquility. And one theory we have regarding that is that they want to make more fundamental changes, permanent changes to the systems, and they can't do it via their tail system, which is what runs these invasions. So they have to synchronize it so they can do it by hand, basically, in the underlying data.
Yeah, I really need to stress, like I said this yesterday, but it bears repeating today. Like, I do not like that things are happening on Tranquility that Serenity can't control that impact Serenity, and things are happening on Serenity that Tranquility can't control that are impacting Tranquility. They have pitched this entire thing to us as like, choose your destiny, you guys get to decide, impact the universe and everything, and then they're like allowing changes to be made that don't have our vote, and it's not cool.
I mean, if Serenity is very pro-Edencom from the player base, so they will now have a massive invasion in Niarja, and it will go final liminality on Serenity without anyone over there being able to do anything about it, right? That's the result.
Essentially.
Just to Nick and in chat, right? We were not bashing on CCP for the old code. The old code is just a fact. It's not something you can get around. But the fact that they're actually looking at it and working on it and trying to come up with pretty smart solutions for the future, that's not bashing, that's applauding, and they are definitely doing that.
Yeah, I want to be clear. Like, when I wasn't complaining or saying anything negative when I'm saying, like, this is why, it was done in this way, because this is what they were able to, like, that's not a negative or a positive. That's like, they had a project to put out and they made a practical decision, and I'm sharing, resharing what they shared on our show.
All right. So what you're looking at here on screen is the new safe way to get to Jita from Amar, and it's 45 jumps. And what's interesting is that Dodixie, someone says here, is only 25. So will the relationship between Dodixie and Jita be, 35. Will it be strengthened?
It's definitely what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a massive boost to Dodixie when it comes to geography. Again, because I'm pretty sure that it's 15 plus 18 if you go Jita, Dodixie, and then Amar. So there's something wrong with that algorithm. And that means that Dodixie is going to have a lot of benefits. Also because it's actually in Sank where quite a lot of null entities are already engaged, right? You have the Ignoiden Keepstar, I believe, that we were told about how it was launched by Willy here on stream, which can now both feed Dodixie and Jita. I think, of course, it's been doing that, but now it can definitely focus on that. And then you, in the other end of Sank, I'm pretty sure that there's something MC Horde related. I think I'm not entirely sure who controls that anymore, but I'm pretty sure it's also a keep star up there. So there's like 2 entry points and null interests in Sank. That means that Sank is going to be potentially more interesting as a trade hub than it used to be. So maybe now Astaroth can have his dream.
So you said yesterday, you said the Silk Road, and like that's definitely something that I was thinking about as well, and I like that you used that, because if you look at the full HiSec route, like avoiding and only going where there is police from Jita to Omar, it really does essentially go past the other hubs. So
yeah,
this really makes it into a road with all of these stops along the way, and I'm curious to see what will happen.
If we didn't have the null dominance in HiSec right now, I can tell you what I would do with the structure people that I was working with back when we were still very active. I would actually suggest that we put structures in those what I call mid-sec systems. So we basically create these way stations along that route, right? So they become places to pick up some activity and some benefits from both low-sec and potentially from null. And especially on the industry side, I think I would have focused so TIOs. And then they would become like the steps along the Silk Road, right? So you basically, instead of having this issue with too much piracy, you would kind of have this self-moderating anti-piracy thing in effect. And of course the money from these things would be used for protection money to actually get any gankers out of the way. But these things I don't think they're going to develop, because I don't think TTT and that whole thing is going to be interested in creating these way stations.
And just a little cut in from the Discord chat. Dr. Spot checked the Dodixie thing, and the problem is the Dodixie Amar route that is part of the shorter quote-unquote route goes through Niarja, so it's not available. So we are back with 45.
Well,
yeah, an Oregon Trail or a Silk Road, same concept, right? It's just having these relay stations is pretty much key to doing something on that scale, and it's 46 jumps, right?
It's 45, 46 jumps from Amar to Jita, but I'm reading here that, we're watching this thing on screen that shows 15 jumps to Jita. Is that not true anymore? Sorry, to Dodixie to Jita. Isn't that still 15 jumps? Didn't it bypass Niarja?
No. That's still 15 jumps, but Dodixie to Amar got longer.
Oh, actually, yeah.
Because Dodixie Amar is through Niarja.
Yeah, Niarja is in the way of Amar, essentially. Like, it doesn't really affect access to the other areas. It is the gateway to Amar.
Yeah, but let's look at this here. If we look at the universe, we'll go to where Dodixie is. It's going to be right here in the center. It's hard to, I'll have to get some drawing tools. Here's Dodixie, right? In order to go to Amar, you have to like come up here, go down this corridor into these low-sec areas. And this will take you to, I don't know if I can actually scroll down. Let's see. This will take you to Boson and Domain, so that you can go through these systems. These systems used to be dead. I used to live right here. This was my old neighborhood. And it wasn't that far to Amar, but now you've got some proper low-sec that you need to go through. And so that neighborhood's going to change completely. It used to be a very quiet backwater type place. And I think Shadow Cartel lived in Gonard there. This is an industrial park, which could service, and this is what I did, Dodixie, or I could go up to Valor, South to Faction War, or I could move into, to get supplies to Domain, where Amar was. But that whole texture of how quiet it was and how safe it was is going to change now with more pirating possibilities. You will probably see more activity in these systems here. So that's the relationship between Dodixie and Omar there. Otherwise, you have to suffer the long, safe route of 25 jumps. I think people will suffer those 25 jumps, but you guys were saying there's like a lot of 0.5 systems in that route, isn't there?
Yeah, it's a longer and much less secure route overall than the current one, but it is a more secure route than, a system with no police whatsoever.
Let's look at navigation on Dotland and just do some. We won't jump. We actually want to do a route planner. We want to go from Dixie.
Yeah, I've got it up in game right now. I can actually count. So it
Oh,
goes through
Share your
Udama.
screen.
So there's that.
Oh boy.
It goes through Udama. Then we have. I'll just count one. Yeah,
If
it
you
has
have it on
Udama
screen, we'll
and
look at it.
6. Yeah, Udama and 6 other 0.5. So a total of 7 0.5s in the fully high sec route. One of them being Udama.
Yeah. Well, these here
From
are.
Jita to Amar.
Oh, there's an alternative route through a much more dangerous area here through Egel.
That's full on low sec.
Yeah, and this is like busy low sec. This is where Snuff has been fighting it out with the Siege Green. So good luck going through there. I was talking about the alternative route. Like,
I'm just so happy that we have now potentially getting a more central to the universe, because Sank and Evershore is the center of the universe.
Yeah, let me actually see if I can avoid this system here. I don't know if you could do that, and yeah, you have to put it down here. Avoid system. Let's just do gel. It's easier to spell, and I can pronounce gel, and then rerun that, and you'll see that it'll probably go. Nope, I guess you could secede. I don't know. I'll just get rid of this.
Well, you can click the radio button that says prefer high sec.
No, but that I want to go through low sec. I just want to go through a different low sec, and I didn't hit the button properly. I want to go to the backwater that I was talking about. Yeah, you. So I'm going to avoid that low sec system and see if it. Yeah, there you go. Let's see. Ah, there it is. This is what someone was talking to me about. Vakamia is another route. 17 jumps, respectable, with only 1.4. But here's the problem with that 0.4. You have all these 0.5s right around it. And those are the ones you worry about. Those are high set ganking sites. Even though they're 0.5s, they may be set up. And you have like 4 in a row. So that's kind of the same situation you're in now. Again, this is Dixie to Amar, so it's not Jita. Well, anyway.
Everything you're showing right now is pretty much why I like the effects of this feature, because it shifts geography. This is such a vital thing, because geography has been so figured out in the past that everything has been static pretty much forever. This definitely makes a meaningful change to geography, and getting more of these things is actually very interesting.
Here's a jump freighter out provided by a friend. He can identify himself if he wants. Where is the here? So igniting to Basgarin, yeah, for a jump freighter, not for capitals.
Yeah, and Basgarin, I think, is with what I was talking about. I'm pretty sure that's where that other group is staged, right? So yeah. You have Basgarin and Ignoiden.
Yeah, and Basgarin is basically in sync. Not basically, but is.
It is. It's the same thing as well. So,
yeah,
you got all these benefits from this, because it's almost as if the cutting off of Amar basically shifts the whole interest map towards Dodixi and towards Sank.
Yeah.
And that's just a little bit exciting, because it also means that because it's isolated now a little bit, Amar, it's also going to bring new play. People are going to do new things with it, because the people that are in beneficial range, especially if we start thinking what might happen with jump freighter jump range costs, right? If they were more based on some sort of diminishing returns, or it became more expensive the longer you actually jump, then there would be a lot more interest in only jumping to the regions that are nearest you, and then you can of course relay further if you want. It's just, this makes a lot of things possible in the future.
All right. So what? I mean, I love this. I love the fact that the status quo is broken. People are going to have to adapt, and we're not just talking about PvPers and fittings. This is going to be industrialists and their logistic plans, and this is going to be a heap load of people going and reassessing the situation and trying to figure out what the best play is here. What do you guys think the best play is here for industrialists?
Please, chat. Could you stop using real names?
What? Who? No, I go by David Matterall. It's all right. Don't worry
Yeah,
about
but
it.
it's just a bad habit. Don't do it, even though you know people's names.
I know,
because
but
everyone does not.
I don't mind. But I don't mind.
Other people know you by Matterall, right? So that makes no sense if you don't know who are in real life.
All right, but it's not as serious as okay. But the point is, what do you think the smart plays are here for industrialists?
I think a really smart play here is to take advantage of CVA leaving Providence and people setting up themselves in Providence. Providence is in a key position to set itself up as the breadbasket for Amar. Now that the trade route has been essentially severed from Jeddah, Providence has a really key opportunity for them to supply Amar from its position that it's in, because you can actually get a jump freighter from Providence to Amar Highsec in one jump freighter jump. And it would be really, really easy for them to set themselves up in a position to get that logistics network up and set up essentially what is a farm for Amar for nullsec level materials that need to come in and out in order to get their supplies in and out of there.
Mm-hmm. That is very interesting. So kind of like an outpost.
Right. Because Providence has almost always been neutral to a certain extent. There would obviously have to be some sort of kind of agreement for security to an extent. For somebody would have to set up some kind of security network for Providence, but it would be a really, really, really good place to set up there for a large industrial corporation or conglomerate to set up a essentially breadbasket to supply Amar. Not only would that allow for new players to continue to go to Providence to experience nullsec for the first time and the mechanics and everything else like that, but it would also maintain a net neutral position for Providence for the power blocks in the area.
Wow, and Providence is in such turmoil right now. New people moving in, old people taking off.
How would a large industrial corp defend that space, since it's almost all of Providence is within Blop's bridge range of lowsec?
Right. So there would have to be some kind of some sort of agreement, of security agreement that somebody would have to forge. This is entirely speculation, right? I don't know exactly the details of what would have to go into that in order for people to defend themselves. But in terms of a logistics network, Providence is set up in a really, really key position in order to set themselves up in that way. There may have to be some sort of agreement between the major blocks that stage out of there to, not shoot industrialists of some sort, and they get a certain percentage of a cut, or, you could throw any kind of agreement out there with somebody, and set up some kind of protection agreement to allow for Amar to thrive.
Going a bit more general at it, I think it's also for an industrial now more useful to think about local markets, right? If Jita is further away, it may be more interest of people and more willingness to pay a little bit of a higher price around the block,
All right, let's go. Let's go.
Sorry,
go ahead,
Manuel.
Fonsui, and I'll go to some questions from the
Sure.
chat.
So I just did a little bit more looking at the all Highsec route from Jita to Amar specifically. So that now became 45 jumps as opposed to 9 or whatever it was. However, as we said earlier, it passes by the other trade hubs. In fact, that 45 jump route passes directly through both Heck and Rens. And if you add only 2 jumps off route, so 4 jumps total, so if you go from 45 to 49, then you hit Dodixie as well. So that one single route from Jita to Amar really is a road that takes you directly past all 3 of the other potential trade hubs.
Maybe really would like to give his 2 cents on all of this and his reactions, and maybe some leaks of the kind that was mentioned in chat. What meeting? What have you been thinking?
All right, sorry guys, I got to wrap up the show. Unless you guys want to talk for an additional hour, I can come back. But otherwise, I got to run. I have something that I need to do. I'm willing to let the stream go on, and I'll be back in about 30 minutes. If you guys think you can hold it down.
If someone else has the ability to end it,
yeah, I can end it remotely, but it takes some time to do. It's not optimal, but I will be back. So I'm going to leave this up on screen so you guys can talk. Turn on your cameras if you want, give people something to see, and I will be back as soon as I can. And Billy's in here, so let me leave with this one question I want to get started. If Providence becomes pivotal, which is, I think, a very interesting point Tiberius brought up, and now Legacy basically has a really good relationship with Wrecking Crew, which now kind of owns Providence, and Legacy space is the closest to Providence, is the closest to Amar space. Is Legacy in a really good position here? What do you think, Billy?
I don't think Providence really matters at all.
Wow, shots fired.
You are no fun. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
You know, the space close to HiSec is always and traditionally been the least productive nullsec space in terms of industrial activity. That's kind of been a rule of nullsec for the better part of the last decade. So my expectation of Providence with limited infrastructure and considerable history and culture built around being farmed is that there will not be any significant industrial growth in the Providence area anytime soon. And even if there was, you know, that's not really going to change the dynamics of the HiSec economies at all.
But who actually has a proper interest in Amar space, and who will this affect most, and as such, who will need to change their behavior a bit? Do you want to comment on that a little bit?
Nobody really. I mean, for the most part, the Null Empire is operated of Jita. You can definitely utilize Amar space or other space, but
well, what was the reason for the ping then? Seriously, I'm curious, because as you say, I never actually understood why there would be anyone having a massive interest in Amar, because as you say, it's a little bit inactive and it's not really being utilized on a scale that makes it a strategically important point. So why was there such an interest in potentially flipping Niarja to retain status quo?
Oh, for us, I was just role playing a little bit. Like, I was having some fun with it, but it got a little like more heavy duty than anticipated. Like, I just like, we had a lot of people that were arguing back and forth, and you know, our guys, you know, we have a couple of the leaders of the Triglavian community within test, and we had people losing their shit in the logic community, and I was just like, all right, well, we got to pick a side here. And the goons had already sent up like 150-man fleets, so I was just like, all right, we'll have some fun with it.
So are you saying that fraternity's main interest was RP and not really strategic at all?
Fraternity?
Yeah, wasn't it Frat that pointed it out?
Pointed out what, sorry?
Who was it that asked for people to go and reinforce?
Brave?
Yeah, Brave.
Was it Dunk?
Yeah, Brave was very much about like wanting to go help Eating Com.
Is that roleplay based mostly?
No, I think they thought it was a little more logistically heavy than others. I guess. I don't know. It's one of those things where a lot of people have different opinions on how important or unimportant something is. They have their opinions and they broadcasted about it. I have my opinions, and I broadcasted. Well, I didn't really broadcast mine, but I've said them.
The Discord message that we saw from Brave's Discord, we don't know who it was from.
I think that was for like Now or Sammy, right?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, so specifically that was, that pretty much stated directly that their concerns are logistical.
So where is this taking the future of Amar space, do you think? Really?
Say that one again, sorry?
Where do you think it takes Amar space? What's going to happen to it? Is it going to be completely disconnected and almost inactive, or is someone actually going to take advantage of this and try to build it up for something?
So what you have is basically, imagine you had a continent where all of the major cities are on the north side of the continent, and on the south side of the continent you had one small city. Then you split that continent in half. So all the trade that happened in that continent is now split, right? And let's be realistic, it's not truly split, but it's split enough that we can kind of make this analogy. So all of the natural resources from the south can no longer effectively make it to the north. All of the, produced, products from the north can no longer make it to the south. So all of a sudden, the north has to, or the south, I should say, Amar, has to find a way to get those natural resources, it's minerals, it's whatever, to either a refined product, or they have to find a way around it, right? So I'm sure you're going to see a pretty heavy increase of compressed ore, jump freighter hopping the gap. Sure you're going to see lots of that. But for the most part, I imagine we'll see Amar build up a little bit in terms of industrial activity, just because there is this industrial output that needs to be refined and turned into a product. The question is, will be the customers there to buy it? And I think there will. There's always people looking to pioneer new kind of horizons, develop new systems, make a spot in the world for themselves, build their corporation up in something new. So I imagine you'll see some new kind of developments based off of this. It'll be good.
I mean, to hop onto that train a little bit, we also have the side effect of Caldari space as a whole getting less safe by Triglavian invasions. It's still ongoing, the event, but as of yet, they have lost like 10 systems to final liminality and like 15 others to minor trick victories with the turrets and fleets and stuff. So for the non-involved player who is by default Edencom friendly, or Edencom doesn't shoot him but tricks do, it's harder and more annoying to produce stuff or mine and run missions in Caldari space. So that also may make that less attractive proposition to stay there.
Yeah, I don't know about that one so much. Like the only real where this breaks things, right? Because if people want to do missions in Amar or do missions in Caldari space, it doesn't fundamentally change much. But if the output from the industrial activity of mining is something where you have this massive product that needs to be moved, right? Which creates that transportation problem that this break is kind of exacerbating. I don't know how it's all going to play out. Like obviously most of us don't. But I can guess that Caldari space will see a slight downturn. I don't even know if it will. Maybe it might see an increase because people want to just be closer to the market where they can most easily access the most goods. And Amara space might see a downturn because people want to be easily access, want easy access to refined products, the ships, modules, etc. And they don't particularly like paying 20-30% markup that you'll see in Amara. It's entirely possible this will just centralize the game more in Jita perimeter area. I don't know. It's hard to predict exactly how it's going to go.
I mean, in tinfoil time, it would obviously get more interesting if Jita itself got invaded, but most people don't think it will happen. But on the other hand, a lot of people didn't think Niarja would happen. So
I do. I do see Jita being invaded. I just don't see it necessarily flipping. I don't think that's on the table. I think a potential invasion in Jita would be to shift things around, change the whole station thing, bring back the highways, and remove all the excess stations. That would be my guess if there was any form of invasion in Jita 4.4, and I do think that it might happen. I think it's kind of like the crescendo of this whole Triglavian story that that would happen.
Not a chance. Like nothing. Like I will put everything on the line saying that Jita's not getting invaded. Like that's just not going to happen.
I'm pretty sure that's not what you were pointing out when we were looking at some of the stuff coming onto the client and on CC way back when the first changes to Jita 4.4 as a station was leaked.
Well, like so in the previous quadrant trailer, they showed that awesome built-up station. It was later revealed that that's the intended final form of the 4.4 trade hub, but they also showed it being attacked, and I was like, that's interesting. And I didn't know if that was just like artistic license, for a video, or if that's like actually saying what they're intending to do. But I don't see Jita being up for grabs.
It's an obvious solution and foreshadowing of what the conclusion to the Triglavian invasion narrative is. Otherwise, this would go on, and I think Ash pointed out that he thinks that this is actually like one of the last things in the Triglavian stuff, right? That this is the goal that the Triglavians had, or one of them was things like Niarja, and potentially he said that there might be another one, and I think the obvious one would be Jita. Anything else does not make sense from just a story point of view. So I think it's very likely that they might have this on the table.
I think they pretty much said that this was selected at random, that Niarja was not part of the story. It's just the random system choosing.
Yeah, but like it's ongoing, the event. So we are speculating about what would be the actual end event. What would be their closing curtain? Not Niarja that we know now, because we have 3 new invasion subs that's currently running, and we will probably get a few more spawns. But we are pretty sure we are on the final stretch for 2 reasons. One reason is that the synchronization with Serenity is basically complete, as far as we can tell. We don't have good eyes over there. The other thing is that they revamped the spawning algorithm to have up to 6 systems up at a time, back from 3, and the number of liminal spawns, like the stars that can actually flip to nullsec, right? The important ones, is much higher than it was before. So over the weekend we had 5 or 6 stars that were able to be converted into trick nullsec, and that's a lot more than we have ever seen before. So we assume they have now escalated it with the idea of building up to some sort of finale.
Yeah, that's all possible, and I'm not going to rain on anyone's parade, but like they have the developers in charge of this particular piece of content have stated repeatedly that they don't do that.
I mean, they have stated that all the stuff that is spawned until now is random within a rule set, and we at the moment assume they changed rule set slightly, like the weight it puts on certain systems is higher now. That's all we assume for that one.
Well, it's a little bit back to the fact that I believe that CCP is partially taking a little bit of responsibility for the way that the geography and the player behavior has developed over the past 10 years. And I do think that it's very much these things and the massive centralization that's happened in Jita is their fault, and the only way that they can loosen that up is to shake the ant farm, so to speak. Of course, I don't know exactly the details of how they want to do this, but I think many of the things that are possible in 2020 that was not possible in 2004 when we got things like the actual highway system destroyed. I think these things are definitely something that they might be considering, because if you want, I would potentially like to be able to, well, live or work in a Mars space, but as it is right now, there is no incentive and there is no good way to do that. It's an inactive area, and you can't really go there and do anything on market and industry until there are actual clients, and those clients right now are massively centralized in having their main focus on GDA 4.4, and that can only change if CCP changes it.
I mean, we have to keep this going until Meteor is back, so I guess, do you expect we get a new scope video soon? Like,
they have to, right? Law-wise, we have to have a conclusion from this. There has to be some sort of comment to this event, especially if it's like on the top of the, as I say, crescendo of the narrative, law-wise. If we're about to see the whole the finalization of the Triglavian story, and then it dropping into the background a little bit, like I think CCP has done with the main empires. I know there's some law stuff coming out from the main empires, but they've kind of been taken off the whole story of Eve. And of course, a lot has to do with the fact that the players took over a lot of the stories, and that was basically what was the main focus during Siegel's era, with all that rollout of structures and player agency, and we were supposed to get more control of space and potentially build gates and a new soft system. And there was a lot of very, very nice things on the table. But now we're seeing some of these things apparently coming into the game. And I hope that that means that we can maybe close off some of that Triglavian story and put it in the background with things like Joves and Sleepers and all that stuff, and get back to looking at the main factions, which is what the player characters are, and the dynamics between the pod pilots and the empires. I think that's where I believe that CCP wants to take the law. I could be wrong, but I know that the other law nerds have actually mentioned that that looks like what they're trying to put the burner on right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's true enough. And we got a lot of coverage and publicity for Niarja. Like they streamed it, and they made an actual world news post, like their in-character written news posts, basically, from the law team. And they even, I saw quite funnily some emails they sent out to owners of inactive accounts of, like they always have some hook to get them into it back into it. And the latest of those had, Niarja is invaded, come back now to fight for Edencom as a slogan. So they used it pretty heavily, and I think it's pretty natural to expect some sort of conclusion narrative-wise to it, or fallout.
Yeah, because otherwise it doesn't really make sense, right? Because it's kind of like you're getting this mail and you're going to get it and you're going to read it when it's too late. So it must be a little bit bigger than that, right? It must be foreshadowing a threat that we have not seen yet, because it can't be only about Niarja, because I get that mail, I read that mail, I log in, and Niarja has already fallen. It's not gonna be something that then motivates me to subscribe unless I suspect that there's more coming.
I agree. Addressing a question from chat, maybe. We don't know what the final outcome for the invasion systems that got into liminality will be. We know their current state that will last at least until the end of the event, and we know that CCP has announced there will be permanent changes to these systems, but we don't know yet how those will look in the end. Sorry.
Well, it's just we can't ask really for obvious reasons because he put his signature on a piece of paper. But I would like to talk about the fact that many of the things that we've seen during the invasion, right, and many of those features that have been developing over the past quite a number of years now, are all things that can be used in a completely new setup and system where you have this seesaw between opposing forces. We've been doing it with Triglavian and Edencom, right? But in the future, this could easily be applied to actual old school law where I'm fighting for Amar against Minmatar, right? This is really where I would like to see this go. A similar system where when I'm fighting for Amar, it impacts my standing with them, and it gives me benefit on that side, and it gives me downsides against the opposing forces and the opposing forces' own stations and all of these things. A lot of what we've seen here, I see as, call it a test bed for something that should have been in the game from day one, but it was just not ready yet, both programming wise and also a lot of the technology would maybe not really have been possible. But you can see that these were the wishes and the vision from the original CCP developers.
If I can ask you, do you mean this should like replace faction warfare, be fused into faction warfare, be something that is a parallel system to faction warfare?
I think it should be on top of it, like fused into it. So faction warfare become more like skirmishes, but there's also like these almost full-fledged war scenarios that are basically using a similar method as the Triglavian invasion, but just less random, because it's going to be systems that make sense and is like on a border or has strategic relevance for, say, a part of the empire. So you get these, call it trench wars almost, right, where there is almost like a neutral non-aggression zone between empires that's a little bit dangerous. A bit like, I think that's kind of what many other games are doing with the way that they separate different factions. And I do think that was kind of in the geography design, but not completely. And then, of course, you had the highways, and that's one of the reasons they removed them. There's just a lot of stuff. But if they moved that system of invasion onto the empires, so you get this four-way war that was actually in the original law, that can be hot and cold. So the cold would be kind of the incursion stuff, and the hot would be the actual attacks. I think something like that is where they want to take us, and I just it wouldn't make sense otherwise, because I'm a little bit disappointed that they kind of took over a lot of the story stuff with drifters and sleepers and Triglavians. It almost felt like training wheels because the other stuff was a little bit too complicated, but I could be wrong.
I mean, I don't have any ideas about faction warfare, so I won't comment on that except asking other people questions. But on the lore side of things, I think this invasion is a pretty big shake-up lore-wise as well, if you want it to be, for the empires. Like, if we compare the fate of them, it's very different. Like, the Minmatars don't have a single liminality system right now, and I think 3 or so minor Triglavian victories, so they are very successful in fighting them off. And what's more, like, the Minmatar have also managed to not have too many Edencom fortresses either. So I know there's a group of Triglavian Minmatar role players who are pushing for drawbacks and timeouts because they say no invasion, and Edencom is an Amar plot, basically, because many of the high-ranking Edencom officials are Amar, basically. So their space has very few fortresses and even fewer or zero Triglavian liminalities. On the other hand, an empire that was painted as very strong in lore for a while is the Kaldari State, but Kaldari State has lost 20, 25 systems, if you add up the minor victories, and half of those are major losses with final liminalities, where the whole system goes into nullsec. So we have in the latest lore about the Kaldari State a lot of lore about unrest, civil protests, also in higher classes of the citizenry. And I think if you want to go into an empire versus empire storyline again, it wouldn't be hard, because you could say the outcomes of the Triglavian invasions have shattered or damaged trust into the Edencom and Concord systems.
Yeah, they've weakened it, right? They've completely weakened Concord's position and Edencom and the cost for all that stuff. And I'm almost suspecting that the big save is going to be like an almost Deus Ex Machina thing, where you will see this big fight. I don't know if it's going to be in Jita. That's my suspicion. And I think we're going to be saved by the Drifters, right? In some form. And then on the other side, you're going to have this weakened Concord, weakened empires, and more agency for the player base. But we can still then mess with the map and be part of this new and improved empire war stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And the balance of power between the empires is just shifting, because the empires got damaged to very different degrees in the invasion. I am not sure if we will get saved by the Drifters or something. I don't subscribe to that.
Isn't that the hatred, right, between those two groups that hate each other, right?
Yeah, they don't like each other, and the Triglavians dislike many people. Like, they also are very disliking the Sanshar and trying to extirpate them. But I think the Triglavians are here to stay. Even if they get defeated or something, it will probably result in them being a new player for a time to come, like not as the protagonists / villains they are now, where they are the focus of the story. But I think the Trigs are here to stay as a faction, as an NPC faction, most likely. But they have a big ship line, they have a lot of content, like the arenas and Abyssal Zone runners tied into them, and they have these systems they control. So I am pretty sure they will have some presence in the story and in New Eden going forward. And I, for one, I'm a Cabernet, and I'm fighting for them because I think they are a worthwhile addition.
And this is just back to the whole thing of the playable race. I do think that there's some validity to that. I think it almost makes sense if you pull back the PvE aspects of some of the Triglavian stuff, at least some of the big narrative invasion stuff. The result is that then you have this vestigial thing hanging, and what are you going to use it for? Well, make it a playable race and make it so that we can potentially live in what is fundamentally phase space, right? Where they then have these entry points that will be the systems that have reached the final liminality stuff, right? So there's just a lot that can be done with this in a meaningful way and get us back to what I would call the old story and the old power play between the players and the empires, right?
Yeah, I mean, we for a long time in the Lord of Jove were the precursor race that were very high tech, very advanced, a bit mysterious, guiding the others. And the Jove have received ceded or went away from the forefront of things. So I think, well, that's my personal theory, that the tricks will kind of fill that niche of precursor race that's in contact with the rest and knows stuff and is a bit mysterious. And maybe in contrast to the Joves, they are more interesting because the Joves were very pacifistic and very withdrawn, and the tricks are very proactive and very focused on testing stuff and survival and such.
Yeah, they're always pushing and slightly aggressive in their style. And, well, of course, it's completely unrelated, but we also saw this weird new faction thing appearing in the Echo stuff. Not that it has any direct relation, but with the Serenity talk and all that. CCP needs to step up with their writing stuff for New Eden, right? To get us into the next phase of EVE Online, because I really think that EVE is changing, and I do think that it's changing for the better. I believe we've been in stagnation for almost 8 years, and now I see CCP not only improving their profitability, they're also getting their balls back, and we're seeing massive things coming out. We're seeing the expansion with the Echoes, and NetEase are working on a second title that's a 4X game, and we know that London is still tinkering away with an Avatar-based New Eden title. Not necessarily the traditional shooter, but looks like it's going to be a third-person based game. So maybe more like a lot of the games that we see on console, but completely done in the CCP way. So there's just a lot of things happening. We might not be getting walking in stations or anything like that, but we're definitely seeing growth again in a way that makes me kind of excited to still be playing EVE Online. And going back to some of the roots when it comes to the backstory, like what I call the backdrop of everything that the players do, and then maybe making it even more meaningful what we actually do. This is exactly what this Triglavian invasion design in the game can do for us.
Yeah, I mean, like, we have, in Hobo Leagues, we also have Triglavian stations, so those will come in the near future.
Yeah, and the ship range is really interesting because it's novel. It's not, well, it is a little bit OP, but it has like a new role, right? And we're seeing these things in the designs of the ships that are then added and then hopefully picked up in the meta. I just see a lot of positive things that could be, well, of course it needs to be iterated on and tweaked because everything in EVE is broken and unbalanced, but that's like kind of the unique selling point of EVE Online, that it needs to always be unbalanced because otherwise it stagnates. That means that, well, you sometimes need someone like Fozzy or Rise come in and just throw a bit of a bomb and completely mess up everything that we thought were normal. And I'm just seeing more and more of that coming into the game, especially with the things that CCP Rise presented in Vegas when it comes to things that they are thinking of doing with the ecosystem and bringing back the differences between the empires. Maybe a lot of people have not actually been around long enough to remember that there used to actually be different distribution of ore in New Eden. And this is something that might be coming back with what was on the presentation as biomes or localized ecosystems, right? And if we get these specialities back in different types of space, so a Mars space becomes different, Kaldari, Galente, and hell, the whole difference between Null and Highsec, all these things could be coming back. And then this design makes so much sense to me, I think. And it also ties very well with the storms and similar things. I'm definitely seeing some courageous moves from CCP. Of course, it's going to be a little bit of a tough transition, but we will scream and CCP will say, okay, let's look at that and then turn the knobs to make us happy again.
Yeah, one thing, some people are speculating that the 25th will be the day we will see a new development in the story of the tricks, a bigger one, like a planned one. I think mostly because people Is it confirmed that the trick ship rework will be on the 25th? I think so, right?
I don't know the date, but yeah, I heard the rumors of this too.
Like, I'm not aware if it's confirmed or not, but we will have a big rework of trick ships, and we will have the metaliminal storms that are, well, flavored. Yeah, okay. In chat, someone said, Ashai said, we will get it on the 25th. So we will get a trick ship rework on the 25th, and we will get storms probably on the 25th. So many people are assuming we will get a new story for the tricks at the 25th as well, because it all ties together flavor-wise.
All hail Triglav. Hey Ash, please take it away, and you're allowed to mock me if you feel like it.
Glorification of the fit, mortification of the unfit. No, Caleb, I just got one question for you. Are you still convinced that I will not be able to resurrect the Dixie market?
No. I was eating my hat all day yesterday. You can go back. I did it in the beginning, and I did it at least 3 times. I ate my hat on the not newsworthy twice, and I ate my hat on the Do Dixie thing. I was completely apologizing to you and said, this is definitely me being wrong, and you guys have just proven it. Of course, I would ask you, how do you feel about the fact that the goons were helping you with this?
Well, I thought it was very interesting because, like, when Villy came out really early and said that basically everyone should be supporting the high-sec side of things, the big question immediately that came across like all of my intel channels was, what was Goons going to do in reaction to this? Was this going to be the proxy war? So it was something that we were kind of waiting on all day. And one of the things I really loved about it is that Edencom has resorted to suicide ganking quite a bit in recent conflicts. And so having Mini Love show up and show them how to do it right was kind of hilarious.
Well, I was a little bit in a drama situation, because when I was following this, you were not on, and I was sitting there thinking, where is Ash and all the trick stuff? Because we need that right now, because now Willy and friends have just pinged and they're going to send fleets and it's going to flip. It's like, oh my god, I want this route to be destroyed, because it's just going to be so exciting to see a meaningful change to the map done by the players. And I was hoping that none of Null was going to get involved, but when they then were, I kind of got to the point where, okay, I want to see if this brings on a proxy war. And it did. That was so dramatic to me, and I was just almost like on a point where I wanted to rage ping you and say, are you sleeping, dude?
Oh no, I was tweeting and watching and talking in back channels, and for a while I was actually sitting in the Edencom, or I was actually sitting in local, going back and forth with people. One of the problems is that my internet has been so unstable that I can't like do stuff a lot, and then I also had my son for part of the day, so it was exciting, but I also had to be somewhat of a outside observer. I got to fly for about 2 or 3 hours probably total.
Were you impressed at the speed, by the way? Because I was talking a bit with Bart Ghost, and he said the normal time that these things run for is quite high, and it looked like to me that Goons pretty much finished them at record speed. Am I wrong in that?
Well, it depends on...
Like, having one go overnight like that is about as fast as they can go. Like, usually when like a fortress, like something goes into readout, or for Edencom, often those will lock in like by the morning like this. But that's simply because when they're just grinding through the stuff, they just see it as grinding through the bar twice. So when we stop fighting them in like a readout or whatever, they can blitz it through very fast. So what I'm saying is, yeah, this was a lot of people are actually upset by how fast it went through first and second liminality, especially given how long it took to grind. There is a almost 3 to 4 hour stalemate where it sat at 77% for that whole time, and then actually started to drop.
Yeah, it's basically based on resistance, right? Like, if it's an advantage to the side that is further in on the NPC side of things. Like, if the Triglavians have pushed it into first liminality, then the Triglavians spawn a better mix of NPCs for sides and roamers. So they are stronger, so it will auto-push a bit in that direction. So it's harder to push back, and it will auto glide pass. But if you have people who run a first liminality and no pushback from the other side, and Edencom, basically after it entered first liminality, they didn't give up, so to speak, but there was very little resistance of them and very little presence. So if you have a big force, and not only were Goonswarm there, but the Kybernauts or the Triglavian Initiative community was very, very motivated to push the system, because very many people have waited a long time to push the system. So we managed to have a big force that pushed basically downhill, you could say. And if you have a big force pushing downhill with no resistance, then it's quick, or as quick as it can be.
Right. Am I back?
Yes, you're back, because I would really like you to completely tinfoil hat like a crazy person and tell me all the things that's going to happen the next 3 months with this and the full crescendo, so I can disagree with you and you can then get me to eat another straw hat.
The biggest things that we know that are coming is the construction of whatever the hell it is in the zenith, which may or may not be a star, and the inevitable attack of Jita, as signaled in the Stargate disruption. Like, we are still looking towards a couple of events. So my tinfoil at this point is that these porvidium transmuters are changing the nature of the stars, and the relationship between these stars and each other create these gravitational disturbances that function almost like Lagrange points. And these are where stargates can be built, right? So they use these stargates, they put them in these very specific positions and dial them in against each other in order to create the wormholes. And it takes a very particular kind of topology of space in order to create those wormholes, which is why the Talican technology and the static gates were so much more impressive, and why what they did to wormhole space was so impressive was because they literally used just the power of a sun to manipulate the topology of space in order to make connections that wouldn't have been able to be made originally. So I think that's what the Triglavians are trying to do, and in the process, gates that were aligned to previous Lagrange points may no longer be valid, and new gates may be able to be formed.
I'm just going to take you out of the long language just a little bit, because I completely agree with almost everything you say right now, because I almost said something similar before you dropped in on the stream. But do you think those potential gate things is that thing that we've been promised of being able to actually build proper gates? And do you think that they will then be able to only connect like space that's been taken over by Triglavians, and thus almost like linking what is effectively phase space to phase space?
I actually believe that they are going to try to use this to make their own connections to wormhole space. It was said last year, if you're going to invade your enemy, your ancient enemy, you would first need a foothold in known space. And I think that that's what they have done. They've established a foothold, and they've started to manipulate the stars to dial them in to be able to go after their true enemies of the drifters.
So you're saying we're going to be able to build some sort of gate system from these things into wormhole space?
Right. So the gates could either be going into wormhole space as an aggressive action, or more interestingly, they could be going backwards towards whatever their domain of Bouillon is. So the
new wormholes.
Right. So the Zordosh Chislav Zemikorg Noimada, which is the title for this operation that the Triglavians are doing, according to their data streams, seems to be suggesting that what they're trying to do is bring their home here. It says from the flow of virage from the domain of Bouillon, which is their area, into the ancient domains, which is here, shall pass from the first liminality into the second liminality, at last to breach third liminality. So whatever is happening, it is the goal of them to bring their domain to here.
So let's assume for the sake of argument that you're completely right. That would mean new space. How big would you think something like that would be? Also, again, back to someone pointing out that these could actually become a playable race. how big would the space be? How many potential wormholes in this phase space thing would be added to the game? And do you think that would be good or bad? Well, of course, good narrative-wise, but people have said that we already have too many systems.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it would literally translate to actual new systems. If anything, this could be a very interesting way to get to and explore Jovian space, for instance, if that was your goal to actually introduce new space. I've long since theorized that the eventual crown jewel of all of this precursor crisis nonsense that started with Rubicon was to eventually open up Jove space. That's why the gates got shut offline. That's why they talk about Jove space so intimately in Inheritance, et cetera, et cetera. But that being said, having like a home system that I've jokingly referred to as Pandaria to be like this central system that all Triglavian people are allowed to go to and then leave from there to any of the other entry points would function as that kind of superhighway that you were referring to, that you've referred to before, where the systems can actually be led between them, but you would just go to the domain of beyond, for instance, as your middle way. But again, I don't know if this is actually what they're going for exactly, but it is one of the possibilities.
Well, it's usually the fact that when you're talking about predictions of law, they get very close to coming true. So when we're talking about this, of course, I would reject the whole Jove thing because if I'm not mistaken, Jove space is pretty much like normal space, and they have their stations and everything, and we can almost we used to be able to see them. But this space that they live in, the Triglavians, seem to be so hostile and alien to us, even more so than wormholes traditionally, right?
I'm back, by the way.
Well, the Triglavians are defined by the scarcity of the abyss. That's why there's so much conflict. That's why there are dwindling people. That's why their ships have gone from large to small. The abyss is very resource starved compared to the utopia that is New Eden. And so the idea that there is this untold cache of technology and resources that's locked away in Jovian space. Meanwhile, the drifters are ripping apart, Jovian technology from the second Jovian, or late Empire Jove, throughout New Eden in the form of the observation posts and this kind of interest in hunting down the technology or pillaging the technology of the past. This even the Dyson or the object that they're building, this new structure that they're constructing, is very reminiscent of the Dyson swarm of the Talican. So I remember the Triglavians are contemporaries of the Jovians and know a lot about the Jovian Empire to the point where they do searches in their database for the second Jovian Empire and get results off of it in some of their communications. So the idea that there was once a known technology that used things like Isogen 5, there was an understanding of the way that the universe worked that we have lost, and these precursor races are fighting to gain control of it as fast as possible.
Well, I'm definitely excited if we might actually see some new space, even if it's potentially a horrible dust ball thing that we would actually have to go in there and fix with technology that is available through Triglavians, right? That would bring at least some freshness to the game. And this is also why I said I would actually like to see this whole thing becoming almost a playable race and opening new space, because that would mean that the whole Triglavian storyline was finished, and it was actually a really, really long one to crescendo and finalize with, okay, now it's a playable race. You can go and play in this space just like you can play in Wormholes or Null or Highsec, and then bring back the Empire story. This is really what I would like to see.
I mean, it's not unheard of. So other things that we know about the Triglavians is that they're doing experiments on people in order to try to change them, to adapt them in some way. And that's a big piece out of all of this that has never really been explored other than just going, hey, isn't it really interesting that they're doing this? And they are continuing to do it. And so this idea of going through a transformation and becoming a Triglavian, and that's what allows you to be able to be in their areas, that you are fit to be glorified and be brought into their system, whatever it is that they've done to themselves to allow them to function in their their territory, they can now do to you. It is absolutely a possibility, and honestly, it would match some of the things that CCP has said about changes to the new player experience. Most notably, the fact that I know that they've kicked around the idea of making it so you don't choose a faction right away, that everybody starts in one place and goes through one tutorial training program, basically. And then from there, once you're done with that, then you can choose your loyalty.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, right? Because then you become an Amar, you become a Triglavian, you become a Galente, depending on what you do. And not only...
You're not born one?
No. Well, you're kind of added into that whole entitled pod pilot thing. But what you choose to affiliate with, whether you are mainly hooking yourself into, say, the player-to-player narrative, or whether you want to hook into Amar space, or into Minmatar space, or Galenta space, or Triglavian space, or become one of those mythical things that I don't really think exist, the wormholers, by the way, that's a choice. If that is the future of EVE, it is going to be so superior to every other game MMO-wise out there that my mind will literally blow.
All right, I want to get back to when you were eating hat and apologizing to Astroth.
Do we have to stick to that topic? Seriously?
Specifically, what were you wrong about? Welcome back, Ash.
Okay, you remember what I said, right? It's out there. You can go and check it out, right? I said everything that this PvE stuff that Ash is such a huge fan of, not that I don't like it because I think it's cool that it's in there, it's just for the EVE player, the big narrative, it's not newsworthy. And this design completely make that wrong, right?
Okay.
This is exactly what happened. This is not just newsworthy, it's like 2 days newsworthy and ties into a war and will completely shake up the whole economy and potentially give Ashtarothi his Dodixie. I'm saying hacks. I'm saying you've been talking to devs and you're getting your fucking will.
Don't make excuses. All right, so basically you're saying that the development of the game on the PvE part is important, is affecting the structure of the game just as much as the PvP development and the balancing of ships and the balancing of SOV and the structure changes and that sort of stuff that's made for players.
Yeah, this time they nailed it, right? They've talked about PvE/PvP stuff before. They've talked about these things that they wanted to do, have PvE that ties into and affects PvP in a meaningful way. And I think they tried something like that with Resource Wars and it failed miserably. And I've just been not really excited about it because I couldn't see how they could do it, especially because I think it's because they didn't have the balls to do what they did with Invasion. This is exactly the type of stuff that makes it real. And that's why I had to eat my hat.
Okay. Since we have Ash here, what do you think of the Zenitra changes? By the way, Rocket X, if you want to come in, you can.
Personally, for me, just about 2 weeks ago, as we were all dealing with everything in the Triglavian collective, one of the things I've been doing is I just now, I got a big donation from a benefactor to make the Triglavian stuff run. So I've just been buying all of the loot and salvage so that way they can do payouts for the stuff, and I'll figure it out later. Well, one of the big things to deal with was the Zenitra blueprints, because it was like none of the Zenitra blueprints were selling because they weren't good enough, and no one was actually running the Edencom side to get the salvage for it. So I've just started eating all of the. I've probably bought like 2.5 billion plus worth of blueprints of various different pieces of Zenitras here and there.
Oof.
And I was like, I hope to do something nice to them soon.
So you've accidentally come across something that is now 2.5 times more powerful?
Can I volunteer, Ashtarothi? If you want to do any like public offering and stuff, I would be more than willing to help be a third party and manage that for you, so people can actually invest in your future endeavors.
I appreciate it.
Wow. Okay, so you stumbled upon something that was of less value before. You bought it all up. Now they changed the Zenitra. Now this thing is a lot more valuable. You've probably increased your investment. Good for you.
Yeah, although it does mean that now future blueprints that drop are probably going to be a lot more expensive for me to buy, but whatever.
Yeah.
But the raw materials that you're going to be living off of is going to increase in value. This is back to something we've talked
Well,
about
that's
before,
actually a real
right?
problem because that's Edencom. Edencom gets the materials. That's going to be an interesting piece of all of this.
So they can starve you out.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's the reason why the Zenitra is like, so the materials to build the Zenitra has skyrocketed since Chapter 3 because Edencom doesn't run the Dread site very often at all. They never run it, pretty much never run it during Eliminality. And during the readout bulwark phase, it's very fast most of the time. And running the Dread site versus just grinding on the normal sites is just not as important to them. And for a long time, Edencom didn't get the bonus standings that Trigs do for finishing the Dread site. So they were really not incentivized to do it. And therefore, there's not a lot of the material to build the Dreads out there.
Right. And that's what you picked up on the market cheap.
Well, not on the market. So they ran these sites. They ran these sites, and he had to buy the loot so that everybody could get payouts, and he gets the loot. And he was buying what effectively was useless loot at the time, because like it was a bad ship, and now it's a really good ship, and he has the prints for it.
So you didn't buy it off the market. You were paying for the labor to collect it, and you were buying it up to keep them working, the people who were running these things. But you were buying up the byproduct, the loot, and now that loot is worth a lot more.
Right.
Yeah,
so the way the collective now works, or the TTI now works, is that we've implemented a system that's kind of a modified version of my old invasion system. So the FCs can deploy fleets from our website, and it tracks everybody who's in the fleet every 15 minutes. And all of the loot and salvage for the entire invasion is collected during that entire time. Once a system is completed, all of the loot and salvage and blueprints are all pulled together, and they're sent to me, and I purchase them. And then Leon, who's basically the de facto head of the TTI at this point, then pays everybody out based on shares, based on how much they were there and the loot.
Cool. All right.
So this dreadnought, as we said, is constructed by things that come from both sides of that site. So if the Triglavian
but only one side's being ran right now.
Yeah, exactly. So if the Triglavian guys are running that site and getting a bunch of blueprints, and the Edencom guys are not running the site and they're not getting the drops that are needed in order to build the thing.
Can I just take my hat off for CCP for actually integrating something that's creating interdependency in a very, very complicated and meaningful way that actually brings a lot of potential gameplay.
That same team replicated that to some degree, not exactly the same way, with the Upwell ships. The way that those are now made, so you get the drops to make them from killing Edencom aligned ships. I know they're just regular Empire ships, but they drop the Upwell ship parts, and you get the parts from that. Or you can and that's if you're Triglavian. If you're Edencom, then you can buy them with your loyalty points and drops that you get off the Triglavians. And there's some stuff that only Edencom has access to. For instance, the blueprints and the books are sold for DED loyalty points, and that's not available to the true players.
Yeah, I disagree with you, Caleb, that it's created interdependency because all people will do in order to get around that interdependency is create an alt in the other side so they could farm the complete set, right?
But that doesn't change anything because your activity will have an impact, so you can't really cheat. Or am I wrong, Ash? If you fight for Triggs and Edencom, you're either keeping some sort of stalemate, so you're not moving the seesaw, and you're getting less, right? So if there's a depletion or a bottleneck on one side, you have to shift the seesaw on that side. That means that even though you have a character on both sides, which is most likely something that the people that game the game will do, you are still going to push that one down and change the map.
What's being missed here is that
just in the middle
neither side is farming the Dread site loot. One side is farming the Dread site's effects on the invasion, and one side is not engaging. But neither side is farming loot. Certainly no one is farming both sides for the loot. I would venture to say that most of the activity in invasion systems is not for the loot, but rather for the competition.
Most of this has been like a fight to control which systems go liminal and not, rather than let's get some dreadnoughts, right? It's all about the space and changing the map rather than actually getting things from it. It's not about the ISK award, I don't think. It hasn't been.
Yeah, this is
So
Rocket
chapter
X.
3. Yeah, chapter 3 had been a marked departure from chapters 1 and 2 because because you have this tug of war, and B, the result is people not asking what's the S per hour as much anymore.
Okay,
Right.
Ash, one last thing, and then after Ash, I want to switch the subject to Villy and Rocket X about Providence, and then we got to go. So we have about 10 minutes left. Ash, your final comment on this?
Sure. Just one last thought about the subject of the difference between the two sides on this fight. So the dreads only occur during stage 2, which means either it's in first or second liminality, in which case it's low sec, or it is in readout and bulwark, in which case the Edencom guys are grinding it as fast as they possibly can to get it into Fortress and move on. So the point is that A, no one gets that long of an opportunity to run these sites any dang way, and B, to run it one way means to not run it the other way. So Edencom is not going to be able to do it very much in a liminality because the Kybernauts are going to be like making it too dangerous to run such a complex site. And even in high sec, Ology and other like interference tactics that cannot be disrupted as easily in high sec can really.
And we'll have to wait for the conclusion of that concept. Of that.
Cliffhanger.
Yeah, he got clipped.
Yeah, his internet drops out. But what he's saying is that it could be you can stop the Edencom players from running those sites in their own in the systems that they're controlling, and the Edencom players can be stopped as well from running it in the Triglavian controlled systems.
Okay.
So there's not much of an opportunity, and the Trig players can do it, and the Edencom players can't.
Great, thank you. We will have more on that. Hang out Talking in Stations Discord for that kind of conversation and more details on that. If you have questions, we have a help channel. Write your questions there. They get answered actually really quickly. But we have Villy back and Rocket X at the same time. I can't waste the opportunity to ask you guys what's going on in Providence now.
Not much.
Well, Bobby's not there anymore.
Provy's gone.
Yeah, we ended the NIP. As you might have noticed, like the entirety of CVA's space is reinforced and comes out tomorrow.
Yeah, I did notice that. It's 1 month early, so what happened?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, I was left trying to maintain a NIP with an entity that no longer exists. So, so all it meant really was that when we initially, like, Villy and I initially had the conversation, it was like, okay, probably going to break if we don't kind of nip this in the butt right now, right? So the nip went ahead, and then Provi, to everyone's surprise, decided that rather than take the opportunity to rebuild, they were going to up and leave. And on EQ's part, the CEO of CVA and Provi Block, it was really him taking a stand and saying that he didn't really want to live under the oppressive force that RC has become to Providence. So rather than kind of living there with almost our permission and Villy's backing, he decided to up and leave. So I mean, a lot of people would say that's kind of a cowardly thing to do, but you know, he's also taken a leadership decision to move out. The problem is that because of the politics there, that as we all know now, Provi Block has basically all gone separate ways. Some have gone to Legacy, some have gone. I mean, CVA is now in Placid, trying to shoot abandoned Init Athanors. And fighting Shadow Cartel. RA is, which is the T-Mark Total Eclipse group, they're still all sitting in Sasala. I don't know, like when they're moving on. Rumors they're going to Great Wildlands, but at the end of the day, like there was literally no possibility of them moving back in. And after they kind of went towards this path, I was in a position where I was just like, well, I want to leave the door open and allow them to come back if they want to, but the way Provi's gone, it just means that that's impossible this point. So the holding the NIP for the remainder of the time would be basically just us keeping the region on ice for no reason and not being able to secure it and put things in place so that there isn't a fucking hole in the map that anyone can just walk in and cause problems for us and our neighbors.
Right.
So that's what's going on right now.
Thank you. I should have introduced you properly at first, but Rocket X is the executor of Wrecking Crew, who essentially holds power in Providence now that Provi Block has collapsed and left. And Villy was somebody that brokered the non-invasion pact that has basically fallen apart a month early because one of the parties has basically vacated the territory, which is what you just heard from Rocket X. What do you have as far as plans for this place?
Well, we're securing strategic systems for like jump bridges and things like that. Making capitals for systems that we are like on pipes and that won't be like ADMs raised by actual activity. Then like some of the smaller alliances are taking some pockets so that they can mine moons and crab, etc., etc. There are a few constellations that are currently unaccounted for. The intent is to leave some of them empty and hand some of them to whoever wants them, but also kind of set a bar where we're not just filling it with like crabs, just like Provi. So each kind of alliance that goes in there is going to have some kind of ability to do something for itself in a way, and try and watch those alliances grow from there. It's going to be interesting though. I mean, we've obviously now we're kind of direct neighbors with Legacy, and we've already had some kind of conversations with them and a few of the entities on kind of the border. We've already got kind of working relationships with them now, so things are starting to settle down from that perspective, and it's kind of trend that we want to continue to push. On our side, we're just kind of holding the line and reinforcing the border of legacy space at this point, to make sure if anyone does try and come in that they're going to have to go through us to get to anything legacy wise. Because I mean, Derelict's right on the southeast border of like Catch, Provi, Curse, right? So anything going down there has to really go through us. So we've become the buffer zone that was Provi, really.
Right. So inside of Providence was a Keepstar and 9UI, which is basically known as the market center hub of Providence. That went to Severance. Severance has joined Legacy. So Legacy basically owns the Keepstar in Providence, at least one of them. Was there more than one? I think there's two.
Yeah, no, it's just there's two Keepstars in were Provi block. One was the Coalition Hispania one, Argentinian guys, all Spanish speaking. They basically have never really, they didn't agree with what was going on in Provi and Provi block leadership, so they literally haven't shown up for a fleet against us for like the last year. So we had nothing against them. They're still happy being neighbors with Legacy, and there was no issue there, so we just blued them and left them to it, really. The other Keepstar is, as you say, the 9UI one, which is now in Severance, which is part of Legacy. Again, we've got no issue with them. You know, it's either going to stay there or get unanchored or something, but there's no intention to kill it. So, yeah.
Not under threat. Billy, what are you going to do with it?
Wasn't even tracking it, basically, like
Kinda
up
busy.
until like a day or two ago, and then somebody's like, you tracking this? I'm like, nope.
Well,
I
it is.
mean,
EQ transferred it to Severance, knowing that you know we have positive ties with Legacy and therefore wouldn't shoot it the moment the NIP ended, because essentially we had this like NIP coordination channel with Provi block like CEOs and stuff, and they I put in there like literally I spoke to Billy first and was like and had the conversation, which was basically well, Provi's gone and the region's empty, so and they no longer exist, so I'm going to end this. And Billy, your response was basically, well, I mean, what can we do, right?
well,
So,
I mean, they do not exist. Like, you know, it's like, you know, you brokered this deal, but they don't kind of exist anymore. I'm like, well, yeah, they no longer really exist. So, I mean, what do you want me to say here? Like,
yeah,
you know, nobody wants the little guy in Provi to get hurt here. Like, you know, nobody's got any real malice towards them. It's just like, is what it is.
yeah, I mean, it wasn't
what we're
really.
gonna do.
We kind of like between the net really allowed RC to offer the opportunity for Provi to have that break. Like without Philly, that never would have been possible, because the relationship between us and Provi didn't exist where such a deal could be brokered, right? And really, that was kind of a saving grace for Provi, but you know, they just up and left.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Provi doing Provi things.
So on another page for you, Billy, you're busy. You got fingers all over the place. You're monitoring the situation in HiSec. You're not tracking Providence, but it's happening, and then you're in the middle of a war. Tell me about what you think about Niarja.
I mean, Niarja is gone. It is now Triglavian space. So,
Does this hurt you or Fraternity or any of
no,
you
not
guys?
really. No.
All right. Well, Goon Swarm fought in that to make sure that it changed over to Triglavian. They sent 3 fleets. What's your opinion on that?
I mean, they wanted to go have fun, so they did. Like, we saw that, like, our opinion was we were staying neutral. We saw them send a fleet, so we're like, all right, we'll declare for Edencom. You know, it was a bit of RP, whatever.
Right. Well, which one came first? Did they show up for Triglavians first?
Yeah. They had like a 150-man fleet up. That was why we sent out the ping. We're like, all right, well, if we got to declare for somebody, we may as well declare against goons. You know,
Right.
so,
Keep the hostility up.
something like that.
Don't confuse the issue. No allies here. Okay. Last thing is, and I didn't get a chance to talk to you since this happened, but you guys took a punch to the face in YTech 2. What happened?
I mean, I don't know if I'd call it a punch to the face. We lost a Raven fleet to bombs, but
yeah, but I think it swung morale pretty hard at least on the Imperium side. They were celebrating that.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, it's the first time they had a battle where they didn't lose, and that.
So rude.
well, let's be fair. They came out even in the ISCOR, and their Keepstar didn't get reinforced more. Like, that's literally all that happened, right? Like,
yeah, I suppose.
Like it's the way you look at it, right? Like, yeah, they won the battle, I guess, but they won the battle by not losing the battle, I guess would be another way to put it. You know, it's literally a situation where they went even ISCOR wise. You know, they fed a whole fleet trying to get in, and you know, then they bombed our Ravens because mistakes were made, and you know, then the Keepstar wasn't reinforced anymore.
Yeah,
and then we just did another Keepstar the next day. Like, it's.
Now everybody seems to pin this on Pro God. How's he doing? Is he smarting from
He's
this?
fine. It's not the first time he's, you know, had a moment where things didn't go right.
Is he going to quit?
No.
Okay.
As I said, man, he's had more than his share of hiccups in his Eve career.
Yeah. Was that even like a rumor? Was that a thing? Did that
no.
I'm sure the goons spun it that way.
Well, no, it's true that not that he's going to quit, but it's true that he can sometimes be flaky, right? Like sometimes, I don't know if he leaves the thing, but things kind of fall apart sometimes with Pro God, don't they? Or maybe it's just my experience.
I don't know.
From my experience, like having known like Pro God since like 2012, no.
Okay.
That's not the case.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Sometimes he does like sleep in or like show up late to stuff, and we all make fun of him. But like,
but he doesn't quit.
No. He's not that kind of guy.
All right, that's probably a better way to put it. He sleeps in. All right.
Well, I mean, like, you know, I'm not trying to throw shade. It's just like it's a hilarious kind of little truth of him. So
no, I like it. You know, he eats chicken wings and pizza on screen. He sleeps in. He's a regular guy. What do you want? Why we like him?
And he still has perfect surfer hair.
All right. Hey, Rocket X, thanks for coming by. Villy, thank you too. Ashtarothi, it's good to see you. Caleb, thanks for holding down the fort with Fonsway. Gregorin, Silva, and Tiberius, thank you guys for hanging out with us here in the on-air channel. We're going to spill over to the public channel in just a second, and we're going to raid Ron, take you deeper into EVE Online for the rest of the day. Thanks, everyone. Remember to support us on patreon.com/Matterall. And give us upvotes and comments and whatever you can do to increase our visibility to get these things up there. Thanks very much. We will see you all tomorrow.
Give us upvotes.
Well, I don't know what you ask for. It's all like I'm an amateur at the asking for upvote things. Like, what do you want?
So like and subscribe and click the notification bell, or
yeah, I don't know. I don't know what upvotes are like. Facebook, right? What do I know? All right. See you guys tomorrow.